Hi, I'm Heather Hubbard. I went from being a lawyer and partner at one of the largest firms in America to becoming an online personality and successful entrepreneur. I know what it takes to rise to the top. I also know all too well the toll it can take on your health and personal life. So, how do you shine bright without burning out? How do you chase joy while achieving success? You're listening to the Hustle and Flow podcast. Welcome back to another episode of Hustle and Flow. I am your host, Heather Hubbard. Have you ever had one of those days where nothing seems to go right? Y'all, I'm in the middle of it. I recorded this entire episode, and it was so long we were going to make it a two-parter. And it was processing, and the video software crashed. So I lost all of it. And then I thought, okay, well, I'll just do it on Zoom. The cats don't understand daylight savings. They're wanting dinner. And then the phone starts ringing. I'm sure my husband's going to come home soon at any point now. I have been working on this episode all day long. And I'm like, does the universe not want me to share this valuable information? Or is it just the devil? I don't know. Anyway, I'm committed. So I am bringing you this episode. If it crashes again, though, I don't know. You'll never have heard any of this. I'm going to throw it all out the window. So, as you can see, and part of why I think it's crashing, I am in my home office, my new studio. And I was testing out my fancy camera, my fancy Canon camera. And I think that's why everything keeps crashing. It just requires a lot more resources. And then also using my fancy Heil microphone. Also, combined, it's just a lot. Maybe I need a new computer. Who really knows? So I'm doing this on Zoom, which is what I did the last two episodes on, but I forgot they don't let you have 1080. So I don't like the quality as well, but we're testing it. We'll see. And if you are listening on Apple or Spotify or somewhere where you're just getting the audio app and you're like, what are you talking about with a video camera and all these things? Well, come on over to YouTube. That's where you've got video. So for those of you watching on YouTube, you can see behind me, I've got some options going on. By the way, this has nothing to do with the podcast episode. But if you're anything like me and something like, it's like, there's so much going on here. It's like so distracting. If I don't tell you what it is, I just feel like you're going to have a hard time paying attention. And the content we have is really good today. It's really good. So I'll just briefly tell you, I'm trying to decide what to do as my background. And I have this black and white. I believe that's Kelly Wearstler's channels. So it's a lot though. When the whole thing is done, it would be a lot, but I like it. And then let's see, in the middle here, we have Milton. Is it Milton and King? They're a company out of Australia, but they're in the US as well. And this is not a mural, but it's like double roll. So it's pretty wide with the actual pattern. As you can see, it is very colorful. I like it. And then over here, this is a very, very rough sketch, but this is my rough sketch of a painting that I would do. So it would be a lot of just boxes and then different variants and shadings and color. For this one, I did the red, orange, and pink. I'm kind of really into that as I'm painting these days. And then dresses, because I love to paint dresses, or I did as a little kid. And I have found that it still brings me a lot of joy and gets me out of my head and a lot more creative. So I don't know what's going to happen to this wall, but you'll get to see as we move along. You'll see where it's going. But those, I've got them up because I thought maybe you had opinions. You helped me with the podcast cover, put that on Instagram, and you all helped me. It ended up being, by the way, number 4, which was my painting. And I threw that one in there. I didn't think it was a serious contender, and y'all loved it, which just, I mean, it makes my heart swell because it's like that's my painting. So I may end up doing this over here, the dresses or something where I do it on my own just because I feel like with this new hustle and flow, I'm trying to bring my whole self to the table. I think, brought most of myself, but I've even learned more of who I am over the last few years, which I shared a little bit about in episode 169. I about said episode one. It's like episode one of the reboot, but it's episode 169. So, anyway, that's what's going on here. All right, let's get into the actual substance of this episode because it is good. It is good. It's all about pricing. It's about loss leader pricing and break even pricing. And some of you, this may not relate to, but that's kind of what this entire podcast is about, right? You learn what's relevant to you, you take what's relevant to you. But oftentimes, if you listen to things that you're like, I don't even see how that would relate, it somehow does. That's how I like to approach life. I'm constantly trying to be in different areas, different worlds. And I mean that kind of literally and figuratively, because I want to be exposed to ideas that I might be able to relate and put to my own life, my own business. So the entrepreneurs are especially going to like this. I feel like if you're in the corporate world, you maybe already know this, but depending on the department you're in, you may not. Okay. So, one of the reasons why I think this is such an important topic right now is just because of what's going on with the economy. We've had crazy inflation over the last few years. We also keep hearing about a recession that we keep thinking is going to happen, but has not happened yet. And so we also keep seeing these peaks and valleys with supply and demand, and also just new client projects. And some people's work is going down. It's just, there's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of fear in the air, but also with inflation, you kind of need to be charging more. And I've also seen a lot of people kind of move into the entrepreneurial space. And so I thought, let's talk about what pricing looks like. I've also heard a lot recently about charging what you're worth. And I've probably used that phrase myself, but I don't like it. I rescind I rescind that thought and have a new one. So I feel like when we say you charge what you're worth, if by worth you mean your experience, like what the experience and the wisdom, the quality that you're bringing to the table, okay. But I feel like when we say charge your worth, that it can trigger this feeling of your personal worth. And so I think assuming that you feel like you are worthy, you might be overcharging. And if you're really insecure, you might be undercharging. But your personal worth has nothing to do with pricing. Zero, nada, nothing. We are all worthy as human beings just because we just are. We were born worthy. We're going to die worthy. Your worth has nothing to do with your success, your business success, your financial success. And sometimes when you hear people say, oh, just charge more, you're hurting yourself because you may not be in that position yet. And pricing is always about the market. What is the market willing to bear? Period. End of story. Okay. Let's talk about this though. There are 4 reasons why you might use loss leader or break even pricing. And I guess let me back up 2 seconds because some of you may not know what that is. Okay. Break even pricing is when whatever you're putting out into the world, whether it is a service or a product, the money that's coming in, if it's break even, is the same as what's going out expense wise. And that, depending on who you're talking to, can or cannot include labor. So you just choose, and then that's what you go with, right? Just be consistent in your own business. So that would be break even pricing. So you're not making anything. Even if you're charging someone something, at the end of the day, you're making $0. Okay. Loss leader pricing is when you maybe offer something for free or you're charging a price, but your expense is actually more than the revenue coming in. So you're actually losing money. Some companies use the term loss leader to refer to you're not making as much money. So, like from a profitability standpoint. So, if like you have a standard, we have to be this profitable, but you're willing to take less profitability on something else, some people refer to that as a loss leader. And part of that is because the reasoning is the same. But I think for you, I think with this audience, let's consider it you are actually losing money. All right. So, there are 4 reasons why you might purposefully use loss leader or break even pricing. And they all relate to being a new entrant in the market. Now, the person that's the new entrant might be different. It might not even be a person, it might just be a situation. So let's break them down. Okay. The first one is when you are entering a crowded market. Really crowded market. So it's like, well, how am I going to get a share or try to gain more market share? Well, one of the things you might do is offer much lower pricing or free pricing just to get in the door, just to get in the door. The second would be if it is a brand new concept. So this is no one's ever seen it before. And you'll get some early adopters, but most people want something that has already been tested, it's already been vetted, it is tried and true. And so they need their friends, their family, their colleagues, other people to say, oh, yeah, this is great. Go try it out. They don't want to be the first to try it out. So sometimes you have to do loss leader or break even pricing just to get people to test it, to experience it. Facebook would be a great example of this. When Facebook came out, that particular kind of social media platform, people weren't familiar with it. I mean, there was MySpace, but that really wasn't the same. And so to get people on this platform, they allowed you to do so for free. And they lost a lot of money in the process, but it was purposeful. And this is part of what we're talking about today, right? There's a purpose behind it. They are now one of the most successful companies in the United States. So I don't think it was a dumb move. All right. So the third reason why you might want to use this kind of pricing is you're new. You're new. You might be a new hairdresser. You might be a new lawyer. You might be a new therapist. You might be a new dog groomer. I'm just naming all kinds of things. If you are in the service industry at all and you are new, similar to being an employee, you're not going to get paid as a brand new employee the same as a 10-year or a 20-year employee. And I don't even mean with the same company. It's just the level of experience because you have more knowledge, you have more perspective, more wisdom, more just, boots on the ground, and you're probably a lot more efficient and you're just better, right? Like the more we do things, the better we get at them. So if you yourself are new to the market, maybe it's not necessarily a crowded market, or maybe it is. And maybe it's something that's very established, like, getting your hair cut or therapy. If you're new, it's going to be really hard for you to come out and be charging the kind of pricing that some of your competitors are because you don't have clients yet. And you may not be as skilled yet as you one day hope to be. So that's a great reason to get your foot in the door and to start building that reputation. The fourth reason that you might use loss leader or break even pricing is your client is new. So this is where you may have a ton of experience and the market might be really established, the product or service might be really established, but this particular person is new and they're not yet sure that they want to do it. And so this is the concept of you are giving them a very small taste to allow them to experience it so that they can come in. A lot of people give free consults. Let me tell you, a consult is for sure loss leader pricing because technically you should be charging for that. You are providing value, but you do it as a loss leader because that new person might need to have that experience with you for them to then purchase the next thing. And so it's worth it, right? Like loss leader pricing and break even pricing, when done right, is straight up an advertising fee. It is just marketing. And I think that's where a lot of times when we're pricing and we're just trying to figure out what to charge is knowing what is the actual P&L on a valuable service and what is marketing for a valuable service. So that's kind of why I want to break all of this down. Okay. I'm looking at my whiteboard. I don't want to miss any notes because y'all, I can't record this a third time. All right. So let's see how we're doing on timing. I'm going to skip that one for now. We might come back to it. And if you're like, I have to know what you were going to say, just leave a comment in the YouTube. I'll tell you what I was going to say. Okay. All right. So here's the key to purposeful loss leader break even pricing. You have to know the end goal. You have to know your why. And that may seem obvious, but in business and in life, we do a lot of things with good intention, but then we forget the intention and we get wrapped up in all of the details that have nothing to do with the intention, and then it doesn't work. So, this is why you got to know your why. What is the purpose? What is the end goal? And know that on the front end. So, one reason you might do it is because you're trying to create an advertising model. And that's what Facebook was doing. They knew all along what the end goal was, and that was to create revenue through advertising on their platform. And the way that they were going to attract advertisers to their platform was to attract as many users as possible. And it was only when they had millions and millions, I don't know the number, hundreds of millions of followers for free that were addicted and not annoyed with advertising that they then said, okay, advertisers come in. And that's where they make their money. Now they've got a lot of other things they're working on, but that's their model. And so they did the loss leader to begin with in order to create the advertising model. The advertisers would not have been interested at the beginning. And even if they were, it would not have been as popular because at that point you didn't really see a lot of advertising. I mean, we weren't even really that familiar with social media, but it's part of like what brought people in and hooked them. Okay. Another is you might be doing it to attract investors. And this is especially true for products. So if you're looking for people to invest, they're not always looking for like, what's your current profitability? Most aren't, right? If you've got a savvy investor, they want the future profitability. That's what they're really investing in. And so they want to see that you have people that are purchasing the product, they're purchasing it again, right? There's repeat products. And so sometimes, in order to build that up and to establish it, you're going to do some break even or loss leader pricing to demonstrate the proof of concept, which is another reason why you might do it. And in this term, I'm meaning like in beta, like you're beta testing it. And so maybe you have a product, maybe you have a service, but it's not fully fleshed out, but you don't want to just like put it out there behind the scenes testing. You want to put it to the market. And so with that, a lot of times you won't charge as much and you'll break even or you'll lose money, but you're doing it in order to test, which also goes to testimonials. It's not just proof of concept, right? Like you want proof that it works. You want proof that you are trustworthy. You want proof that you are credible, especially when you're just starting out or if it's a brand new product or service. You really have to get people to use it and say they love it so that they can, one, provide you like an actual piece of like testimonial, whether it's written, video, whatever, but also so that you know it works and they might refer it to their family, to their friends. And so that is a huge reason why, especially when you're starting out, you just need clients. And I see so much of this where I see people charging money that and they're like, I don't have clients or I don't have enough clients. If that's the case, then you just need the clients. And what I mean by that is you just need to work with people. It doesn't have to be a paying client. When I moved over, so I started as a lawyer, right? And then I started a personal and professional development company and I did some coaching and consulting. As a lawyer, I was charging, I think, like $400 an hour. Then as a coach or consultant, I charged $125 an hour. And that was lower than my competitors because I wanted people, because people knew me as a good lawyer and they were probably like, I'm sure she's good at this, but I don't know if she really is. And I didn't have a ton of clients to begin with, right? So, like, the reason they would hire me is because I was giving them a deal so that, like, if it didn't work out, if I wasn't that good, it wasn't that big of an investment. And sometimes I would do stuff for free. When I started speaking, I 100% did free stuff all the time. But, and this is part of why we're talking about this, if you know your why, if you know your purpose and you hit that goal, then you have to shift, then you have to change your pricing. So with speaking, once I had the testimonials, once I had the photos, once I had the videos, once I knew I was really good at what I was doing, and I was getting so many requests to speak for free, I no longer spoke for free. I then had a very set price. And often it's supply and demand. The more demand you get, the better you get. That's how you get to raise your prices because you're getting more requests and you can only do so much. So I think there's a little bit of fear. I've had clients before on the like free speaking or free clients. They're like, but how do you then shift to charging? And I'm just like, you should have always been charging. They were receiving a gift, they were receiving a valuable benefit. So if they don't want to then move on with you because they don't see the value, like that's just a bad client. You don't want them. And if they're just pissy in general, like move on. Like you don't need that in your life. Like don't let what other people think of you and your business keep you from being profitable. Like, you have to protect your business. That is where your loyalty is. That is where your duty is. Like, literally, you've got a duty to the business. And if people don't want you making money in that business, bye. Bye bye. Okay. So you just got to let that go. All right. What are some other reasons that would be your why? Oh, you want repeat customers? That's right. So it's like, okay, if I get them in once, I think they'll come back because it's going to be a great service. This is like Groupon, right? Like you offer a really good discount and they come in and they're like, this is amazing. And they come back. Although with Groupon, a lot of those weren't that great. And so you never went back. You were like, oh my gosh, maybe that was just me. Massages, that was the worst. I got the worst massages by the shadiest people on Groupon. I fell for it every time. All right. A funnel, a business funnel, a sales funnel. This is another reason why you might do loss leader or break even pricing. It's kind of like what they call a tripwire, which is you're trying to bring them in, give them small things that kind of like build up their buying habit so they'll eventually buy. You are nurturing them and you're charging a little bit of money in order to psychologically help them know that like we're buying things from this person. They provide value, but you generally don't make any money on it. So that would be loss leader and break even. And then I wanted to bring this one up because I feel like it's often overlooked and we don't give it enough credit. And that is, it is fun. You love it. You are playing or you're experimenting. You can do things for free or even lose money on it if it is just something that you love. Maybe it's a way that you give back or it's just a fun project, right? Like if you love it, even if it doesn't make the most sense in the world, that can be why. But you need to remember that why. You need to know that why so that when it is no longer fun, you stop doing it. We just get into routines and habits. And if you don't know that why, if you don't know that purpose, if you don't know the end goal, you'll continue bad pricing or continue doing things that you did originally because it was fun and you loved it. And now it's like exhausting in the bane of your existence. So that's why you got to know that end goal. And so I'll just share with you briefly the way I used to have my business set up, just kind of a little bit of behind the scenes. I'm happy. I feel like I've always been really transparent, but I want to be even more so where I just like I am a competitive person, but I'm also a collaborative, supportive person. Like I'm competitive for myself. I ain't trying to take anyone else down. I'm just trying to get myself up. So unless we're playing like, ping pong, I'm trying to take you down. Anyway, you get what I'm saying. In business, I'm not trying to take anybody down in business. There's room for all of us. But I'm happy to just kind of share the way I've done things. And so if you ever have questions, feel free to ask. Just put it in a comment on YouTube and I'm happy to address it maybe in an episode or just in the comments. So for me, my loss leaders were the podcast, this podcast, the Hustle and Flow podcast, the Life and Law Planner. Do y'all remember that? It was so beautiful. I miss that planner so much because I used it. I mean, like, it's what I always used, and then I actually had it in physical form. Oh, it was so wonderful. Never made a profit on that, but it was worth it. It was totally worth it because of who it was attracting in, and it was building credibility in a larger way. We ended up stopping that though, because there were a few different things going on. So I sourced it from China. And with Trump and the tariffs and then COVID and the supply chain, like it was just a mess. And the tariffs, I mean, it was getting so expensive, it wasn't worth it. And I couldn't actually source it in the US because no one really does that for an affordable price. So it then just became really hard in general. And I'm not a planner company. Like there's a ton of planner companies where it's all they do. So their volume is so high, it made sense. My volume was not that high. So, but that was an example of a loss leader. The podcast, the reason I mentioned that is there's a really big expense to doing a podcast. I hire editors and just there's a lot more than that, right? Like between the team and the time and the technology, it costs a lot of money. And if you don't have sponsors or it's not, monetized through an advertising stream, then this podcast has always been super valuable. And I think you guys know that. I've had so many people to this day say, like, even when I took a 3-year, hiatus, or we said it was over, we didn't even know it was a hiatus. They're like, it is so good. I still refer, people to that, but it's free, but it's not free for me. So that was Loss Leader. And then my live events. So we did our annual planning. We did Phoenix, so much fun. Miami, so much fun. Then we did one virtual because of COVID. We had summer camp virtual. We had San Diego. All of those. I think if you ever had like early bird pricing, it would be like 500 or 1,000. And normally the tickets were like maybe 1,500 or a little bit more than that. And we always lost money. My goal was to break even, but I don't think we ever did. I don't think we ever did. It costs so much money to put on an event. If you've never put one on and you pay like 100 or $200 to go like to an industry event, like it's because of all these like huge corporate sponsors. Like it's like $90 a gallon for coffee. And like you have to buy a minimum amount of stuff. And so it's not just the coffee. It's super expensive to put on an event, but I did them, right? So the podcast, the planner, and the event, those were all loss leaders. On a good day, it was break even, but I did it because it was advertising, it was marketing for my masterminds, my speaking, my keynotes, and workshops. All of those had great profitability, but they were high price points. And the way that I got those clients was because they generally came through the podcast, they came through the live event. The planner was not as successful, but the planner generally a lot of times would get people into the live event because it was stacked. And so not everyone is going to buy, right? But like you don't need everyone to buy to get into that higher one. So for the people who like bought the planner, went to the live event or listened to the podcast and never did a mastermind or hired me for speaking, like basically I paid to provide them those services. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that because I still got what I wanted at the end of the day. Like that's how you have to look at it from a business perspective. And it's all nurturing, right? Like it's all building a brand and reputation. So it was worth it for me. And I think sometimes when you're starting out, or it's hard being an entrepreneur, it really is. You might be seeing people doing these things and you're like, I'm trying to do that, but I can't make money off of it. Like, how are they making money? They may not be. They may not be. It may be a loss leader or a break even project. And there's nothing wrong with that if you know why you're doing it. and you know the profitability on it. Okay, which actually relates to the thing I was wanting to talk about. So I'm going to do it real quick, which is cost of goods sold. I won't go into it into a ton of detail, but when you have different products and services, if you don't have the revenue and the expenses related to those things combined, you'll never truly know the ROI. And, I think a big mistake that people make is they put all of their revenue at the top, all of the expenses at the bottom, and then it's just how'd it work out at the end of the year. And when you do that, you don't really know. And I get very, very specific because often I know, like, what ad is this supporting if I'm running an ad? Or is this employee only working on this particular thing? Or is this software only supporting this particular thing? Like, I really break it down because that's how you know if it's working. And if you're going to do a loss leader or break even pricing, you really have to be able to constantly look at it to make sure it's delivering on the purpose that you planned for. Otherwise, you might need to cut it or pivot or do something a little bit different. So, for me right now, just a little bit more behind the scenes, I'm really only doing two things. Well, three. Okay. So, the podcast, this time, I'm not trying to actually get you all into anything to sell you, although I do have the retreats. I shared a little bit of that on episode 169. So, this time with the reboot, for me, it's still a loss leader, right? I'm putting forth the money for the project, but my goal is to monetize it through advertising and sponsorship, which is why I'm doing the competition around trying to get as many followers as possible, because that's going to help me reach that goal. So if you've not subscribed to YouTube yet, you need to do that. Everything's about unlocking that, right? So all you have to do is subscribe to YouTube and you can unlock those prizes as a community. I totally should go over all of those right now, but I also really want to get this done before it all crashes again. So go to Instagram, Heather Joy Hubbard, or just go listen to 169. Okay. Now, the other thing I'm doing, number two, is retreats. And the retreats, again, this is just kind of transparency. For me, so I did retreats in the past and they weren't loss leaders or break even. I did make a profit on those, but it was never like a big profit. But this time, because it's all I'm doing, I am building in more profit on that. Obviously, I've been doing them 7 years. So I've got them really nailed down and dialed in, and I'm bringing even more to the table. So that's one where it's like, I know I can charge more because what I'm delivering is worth more than it used to be. But, I used to charge those in a lot of different ways, actually. Sometimes I would do all in and you paid it all to me. Sometimes it was you would pay me a price and then you'd have to go pay Miraval. With the mastermind, I actually just built it in as a product. And so we just did break even on that. There was a separate profitability. But for me, it's really 50-50. Miraval is super expensive and super worth it. I'm also expensive and I'm also worth it. But half of that goes to Miraval. And I have to have a certain number of clients or it's all going to Miraval. It's super expensive to run. And then the way I build in my half is part of that is like, where are we with inflation? What are my competitors offering? What is the result? You know, this is the one product and service that I have had that got the best results in the least amount of time. And that is very valuable. As they say, you can have two of three things: a cheap price, good quality, or a fast turnaround, but you can't get all three. So we're charging more, but you get the other two. Although a lot of people charge more than me. So I still think it's competitive pricing in the luxury transformative space. So that's how I set up the retreat. And then that covers not just the overhead unrelated to Miraval for the retreat, but the overhead for the business as all, and gives me some profitability. I mean, I'm not getting rich or anything, but it's enough for me to feel good as opposed to resentful, which is, I think, something that happens a lot with a loss leader and break even pricing. You start to feel resentful that like you're giving so much value and you're not getting as much in return. But that goes back to knowing your why and being able to keep your eye on the end goal. And if you find that you're getting resentful, then something's got to switch, something's got to change. And that's a totally different episode. We can't go into all of that, but I just wanted to mention that. Oh, and then the third thing. So, as you've seen, heard, I'm doing stand-up comedy, which is so much fun. And I've been doing some MCing, which is a blast. And I'm a really good MC because I love marketing and sales. So I make people a lot of money when I MC. So anyway, for those two though, because I'm new, I mean, I know I'm good. I'm still new. And so right now I'm doing that stuff for free. Yeah, that wasn't even part of this podcast. I wasn't even going to tell y'all what I was doing in that sense, but the monetization on that, it's just that I'm new, right? I'm building my reputation, building that piece. And once that's established, I'll charge. So anyway, that is your episode on loss leader pricing, break-even pricing. I hope you have found that helpful. If you have, please give the video a like and leave a comment. Let's keep the conversation going. If you are on a podcast app, make sure that you are following, leave us a review. Anything you can do to provide positive feedback and support for me is going to help me to keep showing up with this Loss Leader project. So I hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you soon for another episode. Thank you so much for joining me for this week's podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, give the episode a like and leave a comment below so we can keep the conversation going. Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel so you never miss a future episode or announcement. Listening on Apple, Spotify, or another podcast app, you can watch the video and join in the after show conversation by visiting hustleandflowpodcast.com.